Hey everybody, welcome to, I don't know what we want to call this, like just a retrospective?
I don't know, whatever we
I
want to call
mean,
it.
You weren't
TC's
prepared at all.
retrospective
That's what that
on
means.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We've all been kind of experiencing this differently. Like, I've been playing it since the beginning. Chris has missed like a few episodes, and Nick is like halfway through. So, kind of wanted to like just sort of talk about like what we're seeing so far. And because like when we're playing it, it's kind of hard because I'm playing the game and I'm having to pay attention. But like the things that I think about the game afterwards, like after I'm done, is completely different.
Like,
His feelers, they're different. They're evolving. He's got evolving feelers.
why don't you tell us about your feelings?
No, it's just like, so the things that are happening now where it's like these things did not happen originally,
Mhm.
and it's hard to tell when certain things happen, whether it's just an expansion, like they're just developing things more, or if it's
Or if
them
they're
fucking with the
retconning.
storyline, like what is
Yeah.
actually the purpose of this. And so every time something happens, I'm like, what the fuck,
So I
what the
guess that
fuck
should
is
be our
happening?
maybe that should be the first thing we should discuss then. Between the three of us,
Hmm.
between what we saw, where in the timeline do you think this takes place?
I don't know. Based off of the first part where you're playing as Zack,
Hmm.
because I don't know if that's right now. Like,
Yeah, that's
because
what,
he's carrying Cloud, and Cloud has the Buster Sword, and he's dressed fine. He's not wearing the soldier shit. So I don't know what to think about where we are because we haven't gone back to that since then.
Mhm.
Like it's all been present, except for the Sephiroth part, right? The Sephiroth part that I did.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, so there's been slight changes. I feel like there's things that are just a little different, but I mean, it is paralleling things so well where I'm having a hard time even being like, so it's supposed to be different, right? Or like, how different's it gonna be? I mean, and we're seeing some things that are different, you know, but I feel like I don't know, man. With me playing the just normal Final Fantasy VII kind of alongside with this, it's quite interesting, man. It's quite interesting. Like watching the episodes while kind of I've been gone and whatnot, and such. I definitely am getting some nostalgia. Like you're sitting there playing it, the music's lovely. I mean, I don't know. I'm really liking it so far. I mean, I
But
feel like I know that it's supposed to be a different world, but how different of a world? That to me, I can't even say if it's like a different timeline or if it feels like the same timeline
Well,
before
it
or
has
after. Like, has it happened before? I don't know.
well,
that,
like the
that
stuff that
makes me
happened in
want.
Junon is like not what is supposed to. Like me and Chris are playing the game, and we're just playing. And we're like, man, I wish Nick was here because I don't remember what's supposed to be happening right now.
It's like because they're paralleling it so closely right now, Nick. It'd be easy for you to be like, "Oh yeah, I remember this. And this. Oh, this is what happens next." Or, "Oh, they inserted this." But from my memory, which is kind of close, they are doing a lot of like true to form stuff. Like, do you remember the guy who slept in the cave and like you had to go to him when you had like double digits to get items from him, Nick, in the original?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
They put him in it, but I don't know if you've gotten that far, but they put him in the game, but he doesn't do that same thing. So they're definitely paying homage to the original
Yeah, they're like
title.
memeing on it a little bit. They're like,
Yeah,
but he doesn't do it. Like, you're gonna go
yeah.
to the Golden Saucer and there's gonna be the shady character. Like, hey, a guy used to sell Gil here, or used to sell GP for Gil. I don't know what happened to him though.
Like there's so many things where I'm like, this can't be what it was, but they have, because we're still on what? We're still on disc one, right?
Oh, I
Like
forgot about
Gold
that.
Saucer
Oh
is
yeah,
disc
Hold
two,
on,
right?
it's
this.
more than two discs, more than one
Yeah.
disc.
No, no, but I'm talking about the original, right? Like
Oh,
Gold
yeah,
Saucer
yeah,
starts
yeah.
disc two, right?
Disc.
Yeah, I think somewhere around there.
I'm trying to think where you see the insert disc 2 symbol for the first time.
Because
I
like
can't think of it.
for me, I'm like they've expanded so like between the two games. Where am I now?
Wait, doesn't
Well,
disc two happen in the original when you get to Medeal?
I think yeah, because it doesn't
But a
happen
little
in.
bit before that, because
It
Cloud
doesn't
gets
have.
fucking sucked into the Gaia stream or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
that's when disc 2 happens.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
because this
you're
three
right.
is the crater.
It's way after the because you launch the rocket up into the air on disc 1 with Sid,
So
right?
we're still in disc
Oh,
one. We're still in disc one, and we're talking about like 80 hours of content.
Yeah.
like
So like
compared to the
just
original one. And it's so when they do new things, I'm just like, oh, they're just expanding this area. And then I look at things, I'm like, there's no way this was in the original.
yeah. So like I just got to disc 2 in the original 7, right? And
Mhm.
that's like you get the high wind. Like you get the high wind, you start as Tifa, you go back to Medeal, and then Cloud and Tifa have their thing or whatever, and then Cloud gets his balls and stuff back on straight, and then you kind of come back as him. So like that's what's happening there,
Like
like
we
has
just
already
saw the high
did it,
wind in the game.
Nice. So you guys saw the Rocket City?
We just got through, where they do the what is it? The parade where you have to do the marching thing, and it's really hard in the original.
Uh,
It's the marching
You'll if we
competition.
played the marching music, you would know exactly what we're talking about.
I hate it.
Yes, it's very hard in the original. And oh, do you remember the dolphin timing thing? We have
Yeah.
to get that's been changed. It's still here. They changed it into like a Wave Race 64 kind of thing. It's really interesting.
And that whole mini game with the parade is what made me change it to 60 FPS because it made it a lot easier. So
But yeah.
about partway through, what is that episode? I think that's episode like 22 or something like that. 22, 23. It's gonna start being that, like, where you can tell that there's a difference.
Well, I mean, like, so wait, bringing it back to the original question, right, where we're talking about timelines and stuff like that, or in this case, we were talking about when it takes place in the timeline. There's still a very large possibility that this is some sort of alternate timeline, and my inkling, right, and I know you're gonna hate to hear this, Zach. I think Chadley has something to do with this.
Shut up! No,
I'm not kidding you. I
he's
think
the
you're in a
worst
VR.
character in the game.
What if you're in like a combat simulation or something though? Like it would
What
make
I'm in the
sense.
danger room?
Yeah, like what if that's what's happening? And then like
I think if that's what it turns out to be, everybody's gonna be mad.
I know people aren't mad. I haven't I've been really good about spoilers too. I haven't seen anything past Junon. So I'm like, that's all I know. I just know it gets to that, and then that's all I have for spoilers. But I have heard that the ending is very satisfying. So hopefully that's not the ending.
Does Cloud parry Sephiroth's sword at the end when he comes down?
Is this
Yeah.
like Advent Children? It just feels like so Advent Children, bro. I just feel like we're watching like, oh man, I haven't seen enough times to be like, wait, is this?
Also, you know what's funny? In Advent Children, they have flip phones, and in this
Dumb.
they have touch phones. So
Stupid.
what's the timeline? What's the
So
timeline?
dumb. So dumb.
Wait, they don't all have flip. Wait,
Oh,
it's
wait,
2006.
yeah. They all had flip phones, Zach.
What about when it was falling through the water? Was it a flip phone?
Yep, it was a flip phone. It was a Nokia Razor. No, it wasn't actually a Nokia Razor, but that was believable, right?
Like, I don't know if it's like, because I've been just sitting here stewing, waiting to get answers. We have just gotten to the island. Like,
Just got
that's
off
where
the
I
boat.
got to. Isla del Sol? Is that what it's called?
Coast del Sol, yeah.
Costa del Sol. Yeah, that's where I just got. I think Isla del Sol is like Jurassic Park.
Probably.
But it's
I
like,
think it means the sun, right? So island
Yeah.
of the sun.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I've gotten to this, and the last fight that happened, I feel like is not how the fight actually presented itself. Like, because we talked about what the boss was supposed to be in that area, for the ship, and that was the boss. It was the boss, but
So you fought Genova. Interesting.
well, I was trying not to spoil it because I was trying to put this out.
Anyone who's played the original Final Fantasy.
Yeah, but
is
not
gonna know
everybody's
what you
played
fight
the
on
original
this
Final
ship.
Fantasy. That's why there's a
Oh.
that's why there's the recap.
Well, now they have to. Take that.
But Sephiroth shows up right before, and he says things to Cloud, and it's weird. And I'm just like,
Oh.
yeah, he shows up, and then like I can't tell if everybody can see him because it doesn't feel like when in the first game where he's like walking through the flames and stuff. Like but like the things that they're doing are so weird, where it's like, what is the answers to this? And everybody's least favorite mad scientist shows up in the last episode too.
Oh, he's at Coast del Sol in the first game. That's where you see him. He's on vacation in Coast del Sol.
Oh no, he was not there.
Oh,
He was
So they
communicating
are-
with them on the ship.
I see. So we got definitely some interesting stuff happening with the storyline here. So I mean, yeah, there's obviously some differences happening to the storyline, right? And we're all on board. I think that's definitely a positive thing because if it was a one-to-one rehash, like yes, it would have been a great labor of love, but the fact that they're making it fresh, I feel like makes it more playable.
Every time I play, I'm just like, I'm so interested in what's happening in the story, because I'm like, well, what's actually happening right now? Like, what does this mean? Who is this? You're like, it grips you better than I think you would expect, as if it were just like a regular remake, right? The fact that you know that there's going to be some differences in this, especially, I mean, look at the things that are on the screen right now, right? Like where everybody's supposed to be dead, and like, when is this supposed to be happening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Like
I
this
agree.
doesn't happen in the original game at all.
Because
Really. I mean,
everybody
definitely.
shouldn't be together, right? Red
Well,
13 shouldn't
technically-
be there.
And the scene where Zach gets shot is at the end of Crisis Core, which would have been, I assume, years before Nibel. Well, there's the Nibelheim thing, right? And then they leave Nibelheim. They have the little Nibelheim part in Crisis Core, but then there's like a whole chunk of game way after that where Genesis goes crazy, the Sephiroth's buddy, right? And you have to go fight Genesis. And Sephiroth is doing his own thing during that. So I don't know. There's an interesting gap of time that's either not being accounted for or is being retconned.
And that's sort of what, like, we're so far removed from when the original game came out that it's like some of the things you're like, oh yeah, that happened. And then you're like thinking about it, you're like, that didn't happen. Like, things are happening and they're not happening in the order that you remember, right? And so it's like, well, what, like, are there subtle changes happening right now? Like, what's going on? And you feel like that every time you're playing. Like, every time I'm playing, that's what it feels like. Because I'm like, I know I'm running around doing all the side questy stuff, but then when we do story, I'm just like, well, what the fuck is this shit? Like, what are you trying to actually do to me? I think that's part of it, right? Like, they're trying to make us question what's happening.
Totally. I mean, Nick, what do you think of the side quest to story ratio? Do you feel like it's developing the world with it, or do you feel like it's just fluffing?
There's quite a lot going on. I feel like that they've definitely given you a lot of different things. I feel like that's, I mean, like we might have talked about it the last time we recorded, where I feel like they've definitely taken the polish from all the games, the concepts and stuff from all the other games, and tried to compile them into one giant orgy of a Final Fantasy here, you know? So I feel like, the card game seems pretty solid. The side quests seem pretty solid. The fact that there's like a sphere grid, this, that, and the other, I feel like they've got a lot of texture to it. It does kind of feel like there's a lot of it. Like, you said, I think Zach was saying that there's going to be like a lot of hours, like 100 hours of gameplay. So, I mean, I could get that with what I'm already seeing, I feel like I'm satisfied with it, though, with the mix of story and side questy, side content. I'm a big side content player, like, so the more side content for me, the better, to be honest. I'm like, oh, here's the main quest. Okay, cool. These 5 other side quests I can do. All right, let's knock all those out. Like, I'm gonna do all that shit first.
Well, I think me and Chris were talking about it, about like, this game does a really good job. Like, I complain about every time they add a minigame, like in the videos, every time. They're not terrible. They're not shittily made. Like, it doesn't feel like they're shoehorned in there. But
Except the frog one.
Yeah, the frog one is terrible because you only get it once. Well, they had a Fall Guys crossover thing in Final Fantasy 14, so it's probably part of that. But like, when things are happening, we're like, this is so much content, and especially the age that we're at. Like, if you only had time to play like one game for like a couple months, this is probably the game, right? Like, there's so much story, there's a lot of combat, there's all these mini games, there's so much to do that I think that $70 is good. Like, if this game ends up being 200 hours, that's like, what, 33, 35 cents an hour. Like
Yeah.
it's an amazing value. And it's
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like it's a
we've had
solid game for
no
70
bugs,
bucks,
no
dude. Not
nothing.
bad. Yeah, it seems good, man. Like I feel like, you buy other games for 70 bucks, right? Yeah, I don't feel like you're getting the context of this, and this is a single player game.
Mm-hmm.
And I see
Yeah,
so
especially
many posts just like Chris where they're just talking about the side content. Where they're like, bring Queen's Blood to mobile. And it's just like, oh god, please don't bring Queen's Blood to mobile.
make physical Queen's Blood so I can buy cards. That's what I want. I
Like
want to make a Queen's Blood table. I want the whole thing.
I think all of the side content is. I know you're enjoying what you're watching, Chris, but I understand the frustration about like in order to do everything in an area, how much time it takes to get to the next level of content, like
Well,
of
the
actual
forest took
story
you,
stuff.
the forest took you 20 hours, and so the other one probably took you what, 30 or 40 for the desert, right?
Jesus
No.
Christ.
We're only 25 hours into the game.
Oh,
The first area took
You're
me
like, I'm
11 or
74 hours
12.
into the game.
The
11 or
second
12.
one
Okay.
took like 10. It's taking 10 or 12 hours
10
to
to 12
complete it.
hours per area, yeah.
And it's not like
So
there's
what?
no story there, but it's like a
Mhm.
lot of the side questy stuff that they're like flushing out or things that they're adding, right?
Well, also like in the original Final Fantasy pacing wise, right? You have this really huge climax in Midgar, right? The end of remake, and then you're opened up into the world, and it kind of I don't want to say levels out, but like it gets more casual, and that's reflected in the Gold Saucer and the attitude with Aerith and Tifa. And the kind of love triangle thing happening, and like at that point, you're no longer directly engaged with the plot line of Final Fantasy VII. You're more or less engaged with the character development at that point of Final Fantasy VII. You're figuring out Red 13's background. You're figuring out Barrett's background. You're slowly, in this game, figuring out more of why Cloud is the way he is, right?
Bad
And so
shit
I,
crazy.
You get to
yeah,
do so much more with like, because part of the thing about them like expanding on things is I'm wondering if we went back, 25 years ago, if they would have been like, yeah, this is what we intended to do, right? But there
right, we
just
just didn't
wasn't
have the
space on the disc, right?
resources. Yeah, no
Versus
resources.
now,
Yeah.
where it's like, is this thing supposed to be different, or are we establishing story more, right? Like, is this the same thing that goes on already?
I think that question is answered can only truly be answered by the like not the development teams but the original story writers, was it like is the potential was the storyline potential already there or was it expanded upon based on the need? Because like I can understand them being like, we love this game, please develop more storyline. And so he's like, all right, addendum, addendum, addendum. And then that one of those addendums is Crisis Core. One of those addendums is Dirge of Cerberus, right? And then when he gets to this, he's like, shit, now I have to compile all of this and make it make sense.
Yeah, how am I gonna make all this work?
Well,
Holy
it's.
shit.
I mean, we talked about the relationship between this game and like basically Kingdom Hearts 3, where it's like this culmination of everything into one thing, right?
Right, yeah.
And I'm not even just talking about this. Like, we can talk about the stories in all the games that are involved, but you can also think about like this game is really the synthesis of like the last 3 or 4 games, like in terms of like the way the game works, right?
You
Like
think the
we've we talked about
Oh, I
like
was just saying,
the 15 influence, the 16 influence, right?
Mhm.
And how much different it is, that how vastly different it is than remake in terms of the way things actually happen, like the in terms of the combat and stuff like that.
do you think they're trying to like create a container for all of the story they've made within this game? Like where they're just like, if you just play remake and rebirth and whatever comes next, you'll get the whole thing. You'll understand everything that happened. Do you think that's what they're doing?
Man, that'd be a big
I
picture to paint.
mean, Crisis Core is a lot of stuff for them
Crisis Core
to
is a
do
shit
like
ton.
just do backstory stuff.
Yeah.
But they remade that game recently, right? That was the one that you bought,
For a
right? That you
PC
beat?
that I bought, yeah. Mhm.
So like I would assume that one doesn't count. But like all the other stuff, like what are they gonna do about? We brought up Dirge of Cerberus a couple episodes ago. Like, how much are we going to establish Vincent's background through the game, right? Because if people haven't played the other game, and Dirge of Cerberus came out forever ago,
And
they're just,
that wasn't played much either, so
Uh, I
so
didn't have a very big fan following. It wasn't very good, to be honest.
it
like,
wasn't.
are the characters who show up later going to get as much time as the to evolve as characters as the characters are now, right? Because Red 13 wasn't supposed to show up right there, right? Red 13 is when
in the helicopter? Yeah, no.
no,
none
I'm
of
not
those
talking about the
people
helicopter.
oh.
Doesn't he show up in the game way later?
He shows up in no, you rescue him from a pod in
In
the
Hojo's
in-
lab.
in the first Midgar
Yeah.
stop. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I thought it was
In
like
the
way
tower.
later.
Nope.
No, you're going through all the elevators and all that crap, and then you finally like deal with Rufus and what's his name, and then you end up going into the pod, and he's in there. He can talk.
Which nobody seems to think is weird.
Yeah, no, it's normal in this world.
We don't question that. Except
Yeah,
like
we
he's the only anthropomorphic thing in the entire world.
Doesn't Kate Sith doesn't the cat
that's
on
true.
top of Kate Sith talk?
But isn't Kate Sith the robot? Isn't that already established? Like
I
it's
thought
a
that the
controller?
big thing underneath him was the robot. I thought the cat on top was just control. Oh, it was the spy from Shinra or whatever.
Oh, my understanding is that he was a man in a costume, and the man in the costume was a spy from Shinra.
No, he's a robot.
Right? Because
He's a
the
robot.
cat
Yeah, he's
is
a
on top
robot.
of him. The cat's
I remember
riding
that.
him, right?
Yeah, but there's a cat on top of him. But I don't know. That maybe I thought he was a man in a costume because you meet him in the gold saucer, and it's like, oh, that's where you'd find,
Yeah,
a
it looks like the
mascot.
mascot or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. Very definitely some interesting decisions they're making as far as storyline goes, and as far as inclusion of
Who
everything.
knows? They might even answer the question of who Kate Sith is in this game. I'm just saying.
It's true, yeah. They have the opportunity to go through all of the backstory, and they're definitely doing that by including Yuffie's inclusion. Like they're making her and Wu Tai a super important part of the story.
Instead of just this place that you stumbled upon, right? Or a character that you had to go to one area specifically for.
That you could miss. You could miss entirely. You don't need. It was completely unnecessary to the story.
And basically once we got to Under Junon, she's been involved like a lot. And
Yeah.
she's still not in the party. And
Yeah,
it's like,
that's right.
well, how long are we going to wait before she's in the party?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I mean. There's got to be a lot of game ahead of you because if you're only 20 hours in and they're saying it's 200, you're doing 10 hours. That's 20 areas. If we do a little bit of math, like let's
Jesus,
say
dude.
15 to
Well, I
20
mean, I
areas,
assume the
right?
last couple areas are probably a lot longer. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but-
like if we're 100%ing it, I think that the 100% number involves a second playthrough. Like
Oh,
just
I
being
see.
it on hard. So I would assume it's like 160. And the game is probably 12 to 15 chapters, 13 to 15, something like that.
It seems about as big as fucking Zelda, to be honest. Like Breath of the Wild scale.
Well, we're in chapter
huge.
5. Costa del Sol is chapter 5.
Well, I mean, that's the way I think it. You're only in area one. You got to go to you still have to go to the Gold Saucer area, which is going to be another huge area.
It'll be like when I was in Walmart, right? In Remake, where it was just this huge chunk of time.
And then what happens? I'm trying to think what happens. Do you get the boat or do you get the little thing that can go over the mountains or the rivers?
The
next,
buggy
right?
thing, right?
The buggy, yeah. You get that from
Yeah, the
under Gold
buggy.
Saucer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but are we even really what does the buggy look like? Because this isn't an overworld game anymore.
I know. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do with the buggy. That's because you're gonna get the high wind, but how are they gonna do the high wind? Are they just gonna let you fast travel, or are they actually gonna give you world
Oh
traversal?
man, to fly through, that'd be titties, dude. That'd be so
Right?
cool.
Especially with the world being as vast and fleshed out as it is, you could just fly over it and see
Yeah, you
all of
just
that
fly over
beautiful
stuff.
scenery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, that'd be cool. I mean, I'm just saying that would be cool.
I just wonder, like, I don't understand. I want to know where they're gonna stop in the game.
Yeah.
Because I've avoided spoilers purposely for that reason, because I don't want to know that the end is coming until like I naturally experience it, right? Like I don't want to
Right.
know.
And then that's when you fucking shit your pants, right? He's like, dang, that's the end of it? Oh, I didn't enjoy it.
I didn't enjoy it.
But
That was
the
200
trick
hours
is
down the
getting to
drain.
there and enjoying it, right? I mean, that's what I feel like, right? That's the trick.
Well, it's like
I mean,
where is there a logical stopping point, especially when we don't know what they're doing, right? Like, I assume at some point this story's gonna veer left real hard, and when is that gonna happen?
like
And what
away
happens with
from
the
the original
characters?
storyline, you mean?
Yeah, like I think there's gonna come a point where it can't just be little differences, right? Like these little
Mhm.
things have to cause something big to happen, right? And when does that happen? Like,
Yeah.
so Nick, during the March thing, we talked to Rufus Shinra, and
Hmm.
Rufus offered to let us go to kill Sephiroth, like to stop following us and everything. And I was like, is that how it happened? And I'm like, because
Yeah,
all
you're
these
like,
little things
wait
are
a
like,
minute.
did you even have a conversation with Rufus? I don't even remember.
I think you do have a conversation with Rufus.
Like after the March, like see,
Because he
this is why
does
we need
something.
you,
He
Nick.
says something. Yeah, man. I think he does. I mean, I can Google it, but I'm pretty sure he does have a conversation. Hey, dude, don't ask me the particulars of the story. I'm like mashing circle just trying to get to combat and stuff. So,
Like how much, Chris? You're the biggest fan.
Uh-huh.
At
I'm
what
glad I
point
win.
is it you're upset that they take liberties with your baby?
I don't think I'm that kind of fan. Just because, like, the first game, as beautiful, encompassing, engrossing, and unpredictable as it was, has grown old. And
Just
I
like we
love,
have.
just like we have, yes. I do hope that we are a bit more interesting than the original game. But I think it needs a bit of a facelift just because to answer the original question, no, I wouldn't be mad because I agree with you in that it needs to be enrapturing. It needs to have a reason for us to keep playing it other than to just relive the same old nostalgia again. It's like we don't live the same life the same time, like, the same day isn't the same life over and over again. I wouldn't expect to experience the same storyline again. And now I not only get to kind of experience the characters in a reminiscent way, I also am driven and I get to talk with you guys like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? So I think it's genius. I'm not mad at all.
It feels like some of the things are just like if we had the original book, right? Like the original script for like the storyline, right? That
Hmm.
they're what they've done is taken that book and just started adding things, right? Like whether it's whole chapters or little pages, right? And I think that's what catches me off guard a lot of the time because it's been like I said, like I think I beat it on the PS3. And when these things happen, it's just like, oh, I remember that a little bit. And they're like, no, it was nothing like this. Right? And I, and it feels like, I mean, I assume it's not the same person, but it doesn't feel disjointed, right?
Hmm.
Like it doesn't feel like things are thrown in there for convenience sake, right? Like they feel disruptive, like what do when we're doing D&D, right? Sometimes what you need is just something to come crashing through the wall, right? And when those
Hmm.
things happen in the game, it doesn't feel wrong, right? Like they don't feel super in control, even
mm,
though there's like these crazy characters, but these things happen and they just have to react to them, right?
yeah.
It doesn't feel like you're into the end game, and I think that's what keeps you going. You never really feel like you're
About to finish it.
no, like yeah, you're blasting through it, right? Like where you have not necessarily that we need the upper hand, but like where you feel powerful enough for things to be done, right?
Yeah.
Because even at the beginning, when you're like level 15, you're doing like 10 to 15 damage with like a hit.
Yeah, I feel like though that there's games like Final Fantasy is one of those games where I feel like you can grind in an area and then like get that little pad to where you feel like okay, cool, I'm like I feel good about my characters. Let's go on to the next spot. But sometimes I feel like the more and more I've played the Final Fantasy games, like when I play through 9 or what, I think 9 or 10 is my favorite. Like I don't even like to grind anymore. I just kind of like try to play through the story because then it like is a little harder, you know? Like I don't know. I feel like that, you know, there's times where you can like overplay. Like back in the day, I remember playing like 8, right? And I'm like grinding like a son of a gun, like before I go and like take out the first, before I go to fight Ifrit
I
or
did,
whatever.
yeah, I did the same thing. I remember
It's
that.
like
Yeah,
you go and it's like you're like, oh, okay, that was like you don't even need to level up. And I was like, like grinded for like an hour and a half, like you know, and it was just kind of pointless, you know. You realize that it's like, you know, Final Fantasy is one of those games you can sink a lot of time into and stuff. Depending on the flavor you want to come out, I feel like at the end, like feeling, you know.
I feel like by that point, the way that the Zach is playing, it makes that grind, you know, where like if you're playing Final Fantasy VII and you do grind, you kind of like just breeze right through everything. You don't have to use any strategy. You can mash X and just or O, sorry, or circle, sorry, and just
I'm
mash
gonna let
circle.
you know that that is not what happened during that last boss fight.
Well, the point I was gonna make is like with the new Final Fantasy, even though he's doing 100% of the playthrough, he is still struggling with some fights because it takes a level of strategy and planning, especially in the new battle system. So I think that also has been solved. That problem has been solved because the grind, quote unquote, is content.
Yeah,
I think
like it's
too.
instead of it just
Oh,
being you running around and just fighting things, right?
I
Like
think so. Yeah.
it's part of the side quest structure.
And then I feel like too, it's there comes a level of skill, right? Like when you're like turn-based role-playing game, like Chrono Trigger or stuff like that, or whatever, you know, like you know, your movement on the battlefield doesn't necessarily matter, but like in this game, it does. Like your reaction time and stuff like that, it makes it a little more modern feeling. It doesn't make it feel like you're standing there waiting to attack, you know.
Well, I think the synergy thing did a lot to remedy that. Because in the first one, wouldn't necessarily use the other characters. I would be like, oh, I'm just gonna play as Tifa the whole time because I'm just gonna beat the shit out of things and use abilities as I need to. But with the synergy system added to this, it incentivizes you to play the other characters, and you know, Chris has been there with me when I'm like running through these combat things where it's like, oh, I have to build meter. I need to use these things, right? Like I can't just brute force my way through this like when I fought the mind player, right, Chris?
Hmm.
Like the first time I had to fight it, I was like, oh my god, you have to be able to do a synergy ability, which means I need to be building meter for at least 2 characters at once, which means I need to manage ATB, I need to manage the who's using what abilities, and I have to keep them alive, right? So I think it's that, you know, whereas you were managing the, because it wasn't called ATB back then, whatever the bar was called. Like managing that is the same sort of thing, right? Like where you're just trying to get yourself in a position to be able to win. And it's not about like, oh, I'm going to get through this perfectly. You're like, you're not getting through anything perfectly. You're getting hit. Like it's going to happen. There's no perfects in this. And I think that's what I like about the combat right
Breathing
now.
on the mic a little bit there, Nick.
Oh, I am so sorry.
But at the same time, like I put it on the not on the normal mode. I put it on the other one, the one where it adjusts the difficulty or whatever, and it hasn't felt hard. It's just felt annoying at times.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just something about like, you know, the enemies are fighting you, but at the same time you can't knock them down. Like they can interrupt you, but your ability to interrupt them is so much more timing based.
Mm.
And you know, you're managing 3 enemies in 3 dimensions, and so it becomes a lot. Like I think by the end of the game I'll be a lot better at it, but then that makes me wonder what they're going to do about the next one, because the combat is so not completely different, but when Chris and I talked about it, it doesn't feel iterative either. Like it doesn't feel like the combat is an update to the old combat. It feels and
Okay,
flows
okay.
very different.
I was gonna say, dude, you just said a word I have no idea.
An iteration.
Ah.
You
Yeah,
can't say
no,
that on the
no,
internet anymore. You
you
can't.
can't say that. You can't say that on Slamzone.
So like
confusing.
that's what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, I feel it in an iteration too.
All right, we're losing it. We're
I
losing the
feel like
thread,
I
guys.
feel like an iteration.
Well, let's ask this question then. What are you hoping to happen by the end of this one? Knowing that there's going to be another
um,
game.
I feel like so knowing the first one ended at when you break out on the motorcycle, right? Like I feel like great cliffhanger right there, right? If it's gonna happen, Aerith's death, man. I feel like that right there. If they leave you with that, fuck, buddy. The next disc would be big time to see what happened. If that happens, if Tifa dies or something, like throwing predictions out there, like
Oh
Tifa
my
dies,
god.
dude,
It would hurt. It would hurt. It would
crazy
hurt. It would hurt. It would hurt me so much. It would hurt me
bro.
so much because we're
So that's
playing it
my
and we're like,
prediction.
Aerith is awful. Aerith's a terrible
She
character.
needs to go.
You're like
So
Sephiroth was
my
doing us a
prediction then,
favor,
right?
right?
Yeah, So like I feel like that's a good spot. Maybe even get you up to the golden saucer. See, because Aerith dies after you go to the golden saucer because you guys do the temple of the ancients and all that shit.
My prediction is, here's mine, right? Is the beginning of the game with Zack is actually the end of this game.
So
And
they end up back at Midgar.
yeah, something's gonna happen where you run into Zack, and it's gonna be the peak moment of this game where it's like maybe Zack will have a Goku moment, where like you're getting fucked, and then Zack shows up, and you're like, oh shit,
That'd be
it's
sick.
Zack.
That'd be sick.
Well,
But
and then you have to have that
that's
moment
my
where he
plan.
recognizes Aerith and Aerith recognizes him, right?
Yeah, and
Or
they get to have a
what if that
reuniting.
happens and she doesn't recognize him?
She's like, I fuck so many. I'm so
Well,
sorry. That's not
then
what
we're
I'm trying to say.
well, then we have to go back and retcon Crisis Core, and then Crisis Core didn't happen.
No, but then we go back to time traveling Trunks Zack Fair, right?
Oh, where the Zack in this universe is the Zack from the previous universe, but he's a different. It's a different timeline.
And I know we already
His
talked
name's
about that
not
stuff.
Zack. His name's Cloud.
Oh my gosh.
That
Yeah,
would
what
be
if
the most
Zack-
confusing shit in the world.
So Zach, what do you think is going to happen then? What's your prediction for the end? What would you like to happen?
I think that no matter what, the disc ends with us fighting Sephiroth. It has to. Like it's the only thing that makes sense. Based off of what we've been building to, like this is how we start. Right? We're starting with Sephiroth here. And I don't think that Aerith dies, but I think right now they understand that Sephiroth is a threat. Cloud and Tifa know differently, right? Their perspective on him is different versus the other one. So I think that somebody has to die. And I know if it were me, the one that it would hurt the
Someone
most is
gotta
if it was Tifa, it would hurt the most.
Dude, yeah, that would be
Like
great.
it would hurt
right?
so
Ooh,
much.
Man. Woo.
Because they've flushed out her character a lot.
Her character's super replayable, right?
Yeah, and because you know how Aerith was like your healer, right? Like she had all the magic, she had all the heals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tifa's like your stagger person. Like if you get rid of her, it makes combat hard the other way, right? Where it's not because you can't heal or deal elemental damage, but it's because you can't break the stagger bar really quickly. And so combat feels more drawn out. You feel like you're riding the fucking donut, right? Like you have a
What if
flat,
they make
but
you choose, bro? They're like, you take Barrett or we take Tifa.
why did you immediately go those two, Nick? Knowing
They're like, because
how I
he's your
feel about
homie,
Tifa.
bro. It's your homie, bro.
I mean,
You gotta
he
choose your
talks a
homie.
lot of shit. He talks a lot. He still calls me Soldier
Bad
Boy
shit
in here.
talker. Yeah, I guess so. I guess the choice is made. I mean,
Because I'm wondering what things are gonna pop up, right? Because it's like, so technically Sid shouldn't be in this game, right?
No, he should be. Sid's in the first disc.
So,
is he? Oh, he
Yeah.
is, I think.
Yeah,
but I haven't seen him on any of the stuff, which makes me think that we're not gonna get that far.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
But we're gonna get to Vincent because I know that Vincent's in it.
well, the thing is, Sid was at Gongaga, right? I want to say Gongaga is where you first meet Sid, and that's Zack's hometown. or at least Zach's mentor's hometown. So, I mean, something's going to happen when it comes to Sid. I think there's definitely going to be some movement. That was also super important because they had to get the Ultima materia or whatever it was out of the thing. And so that was another big part of it. I don't know. There's like, I have
There's
no idea.
so many fucking questions, and we know that you can't trust your memory about what happened, and assuming that that is what is going to happen. Look at him. Just looking at Sephiroth.
No, dude, I'm super excited about this game. Like, I don't know, I'm in love with it. Like, I keep watching it, and I'm super thrilled with it.
And there's so much polish on every. I mean, we didn't really go into the. Go ahead, Chris. You can have your Queen's Blood time. About how flushed out the side content is.
I mean, I don't really need to go into it.
He's like, I don't really feel that good about it, but I mean,
well,
let's just go.
the resounding like approval from the fans is partially like, you know, it justifies it, vindicates me, I guess. I don't really need to say anything. Like, if I were playing, you know, I'd be obsessed with it. My only complaint is that they should have done some sort of way to make the cards random that you get, or like maybe make you steal cards off of monsters to flesh out the game, because it makes the game feel like it's on a track, you know, like you always are going. If you
Yeah.
beat these guys, you're always going to get these
You're
cards,
gonna
and
get
you're
those
always going to
cards.
have this
But-
power.
What if it was
But-
like Final Fantasy VIII, where they give you a card
Shut up,
ability, and you
shut
gotta
up.
fuck shit and card it, get the fuck out of here, or what?
You need some kind of ability, like a card ability or a steal, so
Yeah,
you
you
can
have to card
actually-
them. You know, it's
Yeah,
like you get their
exactly.
health down low enough, and then you can tame them. Like,
Wait,
like
I have to do. I have to do that
and
and assess them. No, thank you.
out of here. He
Well, you
says.
don't
I'm not gonna have to do.
Gotcha.
I have to steal, assess, and do the card thing.
He's like,
But,
nah, get out of here. I just
easy.
want to fight stuff.
You would also have any materia in the other game, so I mean, you're getting off easy right now. You still have a couple more that you could be doing.
I don't want to
So-
do
oh,
that
wait,
though.
wait, I
That's
was gonna
like
ask-
added content just to have content.
It's
Have
in the
you,
original game, so it's technically not. It's like it's just
No,
revising the
no,
original.
I'm saying it's
content.
more stuff on top of what's already here. Like I don't want to deal with another set of things.
I
Every
hate to
time
tell
they
you
add a
this,
new
Zach,
thing.
You're gonna,
But that
you're
was
gonna have to.
that was what they did in Final Fantasy. They just kept adding stuff and adding stuff.
No, but that was back then because we didn't have time to put in a narrative, right? There wasn't time to do that. So this was added time into the game.
It was basic bitch shit then, and now we're talking.
Like
big,
we don't
big
have
boys.
to spend time on that, even though I don't understand why they put like things in there one time. Like, but I'm not saying I want to do the Fall Guys shit again. That is not what I am saying. I do not want to do the Fall Guys thing again.
They did it because it's a love letter. Like that's the whole thing with the frog game. The frog game, it wasn't fun. I could look at it and I could tell it was some bullshit. I would have been mad. Of course, you didn't need to get all 3 of the enfeeblement rings. Like it's not something you needed.
Especially once we found out what the enfeeblement rings did.
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing where I'm like, that's the love letter. That's the kind of thing where they're like, we're gonna do this just for the fans. Like maybe you won't get turned into a frog in that forest, because that was the thing. If you went and you fought an enemy in the forests around Junon, you would get frogged and you would die because you couldn't do anything, right? And so like that's kind of their love letter. You're not gonna get frogged and you're not gonna die immediately, right? You're not gonna get locked down by a creature that's gonna frog you. Maybe here, it might happen later in the game, but and instead they give you a nice little frog mini game, which I appreciate.
No more.
No.
They call
Please,
you the
no
frog.
more.
They call you the frog man.
Yeah, but I mean, there was enemy skill materia too, which was like a whole nother collecting thing that you had to do. So, I mean, maybe they won't let you do that. And obviously, they're not going to throw the card idea at you again. But that's like my biggest complaint is like, out of all of the mini games, even because we got to Fort Condor, Nick. I don't know if you're that far yet, but we got to the Fort Condor mini game.
No, I heard you say something.
Oh,
though. I'm super
it is
excited
just
about that.
it is Clash of Clans, Nick.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice,
The
nice. I was
original
hoping it
one-
was gonna be like aliens versus plants or something.
Yeah, very much so like that. But like the original one wasn't the most in depth either. Like you play Fort Condor once, and then you're like, "Yo, this is rough, right? Like this is tough to play." And you figure out the meta really easy, and you beat it. But even though Fort Condor is probably the second most fleshed out mini game that we've played, like we've seen, I feel like all of them are. What's the word I'm looking for? Like they're ancillary. Like they're not so much something that were like this is the focus of the game. We want the people to focus on the golden saucer mini games. They're just in there. You don't have to do them. You just do. And Zach's 100%ing each one of them, so they take a little longer than normally and could be a little bit extra frustrating. So I'm not mad about any of it. I think they could keep adding and adding and adding, and I would be like, okay. Because think about The Witcher or like Skyrim. People play
I feel
those
like you're
games
just pining for the PC release. I feel like that's what it is. You want content.
I would
for
really
you
like
when
a
you get
PC
to.
release so I can play it. But yeah, I mean, think about Witcher and like
Yeah.
Nick was saying, if you like grindy games where you're avoiding the main storyline and you're just getting gameplay out of it, you play those games for 10 years. Like,
Well, that's what Intergrade is, and
brings you
Intergrade's
back,
just like an extra 12 or something hours to finish it, and that's their DLC. I mean, if they were gonna do a DLC for a character for this one, who would you want it to be?
Vincent, obviously.
Like, and that's what they do with the Dirge of Cerberus story. They essentially turn it into this. They don't bastardize it, right? But they do
actually a
something
genius-
to establish something different.
That would be
Genius
cool.
marketing strategy, actually. You do a Yuffie integrate and then a Vincent integrate. Perfect. Genius. Yeah.
Feel like you gotta unlock Kate Sith. You're like, get that bitch out of
Get
here. I
outta
don't give
here.
a
I don't-
shit. Like,
I don't want him.
they're like,
Well,
here's Kate Sith. We're gonna give it to you. No, you can have him back.
Now, did you want Nick? Did you get to the part where I had to play as Barrett and Red 13?
Yeah.
Where it's like the game knew that I wasn't using those characters, and it's like these two characters you need to play them. I'm like,
You're like, you piece of shit.
I don't wanna play those
You can't
characters.
make me do something I don't want to do.
And then I played it and I was like, man, Red 13's really good. He's the fastest character in the game. He's faster than Tifa.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So
I feel good about it, dude. I feel like that there's nothing we've talked about that hasn't made me like feel like there's just more of this I want to experience, like I feel like the world is good, graphically it's good, it runs good, like I don't know. It's good. It's solid, man. Solid.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I was gonna ask something earlier. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry to cut you off.
I thought we were wrapping. So
No,
I was
sorry,
like,
I'm sorry.
"Here we go, we'll wrap
Sorry.
it."
One more question. So, with the materia, can you level it up and like master it like in the original 7?
So the thing that ends up happening so you can master it. It just gives you the max level. But then, I mean, you saw those materia that I got where there were 2 of them, right? Where they were merged together.
Yeah.
And the earrings that they got that have materia attached to them, they just give you the ability for the materia. So I think that's all that's happening. Because
Gotcha.
I maxed them out in the last one and it didn't really change anything, but we haven't maxed any out in this game.
Got you. Okay. I was gonna say, I wonder what happens like if it births another one, because like
Oh, yeah,
right
like
now
it used to.
Yeah, because like right now in 7, like I'm just doing like grinding right now, just trying to like get my materia leveled up, and like I leveled up. I have 2 Ultimas right now. Like I'm like, oh, you know what? Let's just make another one.
Well, and I think what's happening is I'm like just playing to play and like using the resources that I have at the time and not
Sure.
really thinking about like, oh, I don't have Thundaga, right? Like I'm not even playing that way.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to have all of the abilities across 3 characters because everybody needs to be able to cast, and it isn't necessarily about the damage, it's about exploiting weaknesses.
Yeah.
Right? And materia is so plentiful and it's cheap that it doesn't really seem like an issue, and they give you most of them. Like your first one, right? Like your first taste is free.
They're
The
like,
first
"These
copy
dr-
of it, anyway. Yeah.
These first drugs, they don't get you, boys."
But yeah, like there's things that they did in the other one that we're just not sure, like what is it going to look like in this one, right? Like things like that. And I think we won't know until I get further into the game. We're like 26, 27 hours in right now.
We'll have to do another, like, after another couple every 2 chapters, we'll do a
50
retrospective.
hours from now, at the 50
Yeah.
hour mark. See, because we're at the 25-hour mark right now. At the 50-hour mark, it'll be
I want to be like, oh man, like you're just gonna be chain smoking because of like all the story stuff that's happened. And you're like, oh my god, I
Like, all
can't
right,
even.
listen, we got to go back to the first disc. All right, what? We got to go back to the first disc?
It's the Charlie Kelly meme where he's in the mailroom. That's
He's
exactly
got the
what it
mailroom
is.
on.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and then Genesis shows up in this storyline, but that's where it branches, and
That's where you get to play as Sephiroth for the rest of the game. Okay, see? A
Oh,
lot of
don't-
people
Don't
they go
don't
down
tease me,
that
Nick.
avenue.
Yeah,
Like,
come
Don't
on.
tease me with that.
a lot of people that just go straight down that avenue, and that's where Final Fantasy VII Rebirth stays for them.
All right,
Well,
well, I think
guess
that's
we'll know until I get there.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's a pretty good retrospective, boys. Why don't you sign us off?
Nick.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the last save point retrospective of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, remake, remastered, redoing it every time. This is Slamzone. We got Pyro, we got Poster Ghost, and here's hoping this isn't your last save point.